Hello, I'm Julia, and I'm here in MWAT to show you guys the fly system. So we have a pretty cool fly system. It's very large. It can be a little intimidating when you first look at it, but I promise you it's super easy. So our fly system is a counterweight system, which is a pretty easy one to use. It consists of, you can see here, some weights that are the equal weight to whatever is up in the air. We have our pull rope, our lock, our stopper, and a whole bunch of pulleys up in the up there world. I promise they're there. You'll have to take my word for it. If you're a stage manager, you may have to use this fly system, especially if you're an MWAT, because when you are setting up and when you're tearing down, it is very common for you to have to bring in the legs, which are our beautiful little curtains that come on the side, or you might have to bring in some of the other soft goods and flying things. You may have to bring in a whole bunch of flying things. I don't know, if you're doing a show of flying. It happens. So the biggest thing to keep in mind is safety, obviously. When you are using the fly system, you should not do it alone. You should always do it with another person. When you are using the fly system, you should always have a hand on the rope at all times. And you should always have eyes. It's gonna sound weird, but you should have eyes both on the deck and on the weights and the ropes itself. It's a lot of using your head back and forth to make sure you know what you're doing.
Hi, so I very quickly wanted to hop in and explain what I meant by having your eyes in two different places. So there's a lot of weight happening on both sides of the system, and there is the potential of people on your stage side. So you want to be cognizant and aware of both things. The general rule of thumb that I was taught was to keep your eyes where the most weight is, and then quick glances at the other places. So when you're flying something in onto the stage, you want to start with your eyes on the fly rail because there's the most weight there. As you're flying it up, the weight is going up, and eventually it's going to get to a point where the weight distribution transfers and the more weight is on the stage. That is generally when it gets to the halfway point. You can also tell because it's usually when you can see your item coming down from behind the curtains. That's when you want to shift your eyes to the stage side and to whatever's being pulled in. And again, you want to still be looking back and forth, pay attention to people, stuff on the stage like sets, props and all that, and you want to be just cognizant of everything that's going on both sides the whole time. And it's the same way when you're going up, except reverse order. You want to start with your eyes mainly on the stage side, and then as it's getting to that curtain point and you can start to see your weights coming down, focus shifts more to that, always looking back and forth.
Before you start flying anything in, you should know some basic vocab about what's going on. When you are flying something in, you will always call out what you are doing. You're going to call out line set, whatever the number is. The line set refers to the fly itself. It's a line, it's a whole set of stuff, line set. You're going to look at the number and you're going to call out line set, for example, 39, coming in. So that means you're bringing it in onto the stage. If you're bringing it out, you'll call flying out and it'll go up into the air. When you call this, you want to look at the stage and you want to make sure you make eye contact. It's recommended to make eye contact with the furthest person across the stage because that means if they can hear you, everyone can hear you, theoretically. But that is not always the case. So you want to look around the whole stage and make sure that everyone acknowledges what you're saying. They look at you and they say thank you, and they move out of your way. If they don't move out of your way, call them out. Make a move. We don't need anybody hitting their head. Similarly, on the note of hitting your head, if you ever get to a point where a fly is out of your control, you're gonna yell out heads, probably also help. If a fly gets out of your control and it's going too fast, don't tighten your grip on it because you will go with it. Instead, you should use the safety brake to try and slow it down and scream heads and say, get the fuck out of the way. All right, so I'm gonna show you how to fly something in for realsies this time. So I'm gonna fly in this offer plastic. What you want to do when you first fly something, you want to grab a hand on the rope. This hand does not come off of the rope. Pull it in and pull off this safety ring. At this point, you can get ready to pull down your brake. Look out to everyone and call out what you're doing. So I'm gonna call out line set 39 coming in.
Thank you, 39.
After I get that thank you, I can pull down the brake, keeping my hand on the rope at all times, and start pulling. The amazing thing about fly systems is that you don't have to be crazy strong in order to do them. Because of the way that they are weighted, even if something's like super duper heavy, it may take an initial push, but you'll be able to do it typically on your own. If you're ever hesitant, always call over somebody to help you out. An extra hand doesn't hurt, but you don't have to worry about thinking that you're not strong enough. They are weighted in order so that you can do that. So as I'm doing this, I'm looking out at the fly that I'm flying in to check if I have clearance. I don't. So I'm gonna stop it as soon as I get to either my spiked point, if I have a spike on it, like this one, for example, has a spike, to line up to let you know where you're bringing it. For this one, I'm eyeballing it to look at, am I going to hit anything? Typically, if you're bringing in like a leg or like the main curtain or anything like that, you're gonna eyeball it until it just hits the floor. We can show you that in a sec, sort of. But yeah, be aware and be looking. Once you've flown it in, put that brake back on, and be sure to put the safety ring on. It's very important because there's a lot of things happening backstage. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of crew, there's a lot of stuff. We don't want somebody to be running in because they missed their entrance and accidentally hit into the bar, or be hanging out and leaning over here and being a crazy person and hit into it, and it unlocks and this fly goes up and crazy and we have issues. So that's why we have this amazing safety cable here, so that you can't really hit into it. Bringing it out is pretty similar. You're gonna take your safety cable off, bring it down, call out line set 39 going out.
Thank you.
Once you get the thank you, you're gonna take the back rope, because it's a pulley, and you're gonna pull it down. That will start to pull this rope up, your front rope, meaning that your item is gonna fly up and out. Depending on who you are and your strength, you might need two hands back here. You might want to do one hand. Depends on how you are. You want to avoid leaning all the way over to do this because you don't want your head to get in the way of these weights. That's not good. That's very bad. Don't do that.
Unideal.
Unideal. Ish out. Once you're done, lock it up again. And that is basically how one would use the flies. If you're in a show setting and you have a lot of flies, you might have to spike it. Typically, as you can see, we have 2 spikes on things. These were spiked for previous things, so they're not in where they would be, but typically you would spike it at the top and the bottom. That way, in the dark, when you're pulling stuff around, you can see that your safety bar fits in, and when you bring it up, it's in there and you know where you're at. Hi again, popping in one more time to say that spiking can vary on methods. Some people will spike at the base of the brake and also at where that like stop ring goes. And then some people, like I said, do the top and the bottom. Some people do one spike, living on the edge there, but it's really all up to you as the stage manager. You set that standard, and you are responsible with telling that to your crew and making sure it stays consistent no matter what way you choose to do that. So yeah. I mentioned before you often have to bring in these legs, and they're not always spiked, but sometimes they are. If they're not spiked, how you know that it's in is the tip that I got was to bring it in so that this hits the floor, and when it just hits the floor, let it go up just a tiny bit, and it'll be at height. You want it to be just hitting the floor because you don't want it to be ugly and scrunchy, and you don't want it to be flying up in the air. You want it to just hit the floor. This can sometimes take somebody running out and double checking and giving you a thumbs up. While we're over here, another part of our beautiful fly system is our beautiful travelers. These ropes here allow these types of curtains to go side to side across the stage. She's very twisted right now. They're often very twisted. Once you get through untwisting them, it's a very similar system to that, except a lot lighter and a lot less scary. You would just pull this down to make it go in, and pull the other one to make it go out. I'm not going to do it right now because there's stuff on, but that's how that works. And similarly, you can have spikes, like this one has a couple spikes. The way that we spike these ones is you would typically put 2 spikes of the same color at the same place, so that when you're pulling it in and out, you line those 2 up across from each other, so that you know that it's into the right